Legal Tech for Africa.
Welcome to Wivo Legal Tech for Africa. This episode is the first of a series designed to guide prospective applicants through the competitive Chevening scholarship application process. Tonight, we'll specifically look at the most critical component, the leadership essay. What defines a leader? Is it a title, a position, or is it something more, something woven into the very fabric of your action and your influence? For thousands of aspiring global leaders, that question is the first and greatest hurdle in a life-changing journey, the Chevening Scholarship application. 500 words, one single essay to define your past, articulate your present, and unlock your future. It sounds daunting, a blank page that holds the weight of a dream. But what if you had a guide? What if you could learn from people who have walked the path and from someone who may have successfully crossed the finish line? Tonight, we'll attempt to bridge that gap. We are joined by two excellent Cheveners. From the class of 2021, we have Chevening Alumni, Lydia Jones, who is an expert in designing and implementing transformational programs that bridge climate development and economic objectives in resource-constrained environments. She completed her Chevening journey and can speak to its long-term impact. Welcome, Lydia.
Hi, everyone. So really happy to be here. Looking forward to having a really fruitful conversation today.
Thank you. And offering a fresh perspective from the successful 2024 application round, we have Dr. Ahmed A. Sharif, the dentist you will love to meet, who has won several awards and has won several numerous speech contests. Congratulations and welcome, Doctor.
Thank you very much, Barrister. It's nice to be here. Thank you very much for having us.
You know, Sierra Leoneans with our titles, we can't leave them. So together, we will. Our guest tonight will help us with the practical, actionable advice on how to define leadership, structure the essay, select powerful examples, and avoid common mistakes, ultimately helping you to write a compelling essay that captures the attention of the selection committee. So to start with, let us look at what the Chevening Scholarship is all about. Let me start with you, Lydia. To you, what is the Chevening Scholarship means to you? What does it mean to you?
Thank you. That's a loaded question. I think I would say the Chevening Scholarship is an opportunity to interact with the brightest and best from all different countries or Commonwealth countries around the world in the UK as a hub to exchange knowledge, to network, and also just to broaden your horizon. So for me, being in the UK at that time, interacting with colleagues, also Chevening and non-Chevening scholars, was really an opportunity to see the world outside of the walls of Sierra Leone, expand my knowledge, and be able to take a lot of those things that I've learned to ensure that we can translate it to have development in Sierra Leone, especially in my space, which was public health. And to be able to make a difference. So people who care about making a difference and want to be able to grow their network with like-minded leaders, that's what Chevening is about.
Perfect. Doctor, let me draw you in. So what does it mean to you to be a Chevener or to be a Chevening scholar?
I think Lydia has said it all. Chevening is like, somebody asked me yesterday, and I was like, Chevening is that platform that just takes you to the next level. You are doing really great work, both personally, professionally, in your community, and you want to really take it to a level wherein it's, despite the fact that it's having a local focus, or maybe you'll be focusing locally, but it gives you a global perspective. Like somebody rightly put it, you have to be globally competent to be locally relevant. So you need to, like, Chevening takes you to that level, and you really see the difference. You look at Chevening scholars when they come back, you really see the difference. So I think, just like I said earlier, it takes you from that level and just puts you up there for the next stage.
Perfect. Because our focus tonight is more on the writing the essays. Quickly, Doctor, you're just coming from a successful application, I would say.
Yes.
What are the steps, at this moment that we are anticipating the opening of the application? What are the steps or guide you will give someone watching us now?
I think now you need to ask yourself, why Chevening? Why do I want to take Chevening? And if you've decided, like Lydia has said, the network, the connections, the knowledge, the skills, the expertise, if you've decided that, yes, I'm ready for this journey, application starts on the 5th. And I'm really glad we're having this session before even the application starts. Go to the Chevening website now and read about Chevening. Have an understanding of it. Try to understand the Chevening language. Go through it. And the good thing about Chevening, as opposed to some other scholarships or other opportunities, the essay questions change, but the ones for Chevenings are most of the times the same. Go get a feel for those. Check your courses. Just go to the course section, check all the courses there, and determine which ones you want to do. So by the time the application starts, you'll be in a strong position. So if there is something you should be doing now, attending a session like this, checking the Chevening website, and deciding on your courses.
Perfect. So, Lydia, by the way, you're joining us from Nairobi, so I would say Karibu Sana.
Dante.
You went through the scholarship and then you graduated from Oxford. As an alumna, you've seen what Chevening leadership looks like in practice.
Yeah.
In your view, what is the Chevening definition of leadership? What are they really looking for beyond titles or beyond a CV?
Right. So it's a demonstration. If I should just answer it like very directly, it's really a demonstration at whatever scale and level that you're in, your ability to be able to inspire and guide and enable others. And that's just it. And what I think often we get stuck at when we're writing these essays, and I was rereading mine from a few years ago earlier as I was preparing for this, was that we often think it needs to be CEO and a title, right? It's like even at your small scale within your community, in your cohort, in a classroom, within that group, how are you able to inspire others? How are you enabling others so they also have a leg up to make a difference? And I think that's why it's very interesting that they combine the essay, and I don't know if it's changed, with influence, right?
Yes.
It's one thing to be in a leadership, quote unquote, position, right? Because you can have titles that are synonymous to inspiring and guiding, but then there's no influence that's happening. And I think that's, I mean, not to go ahead of maybe subsequent questions that we have to answer, or as we kind of have this conversation about the leadership essay, is that you need to be able to demonstrate in that small setup, how did you inspire? So what was the situation? How did you do it, which would be your task? And or what the task was rather, and then the action, how you did it, and what the result was. If you created something and you created a setup and no one used it, there was no influence, I don't know if I would necessarily tag that as leadership. So having very practical examples. So I can give one where I gave an example, which I applied for a grant because I was always interested in maternal and child health, and this is essentially mothers, having children in Sierra Leone, and I knew that our mortality was very, very high. And one of the things I thought about was that there was a lack of participation with men. And even the word we use to describe Kumbra in Sierra Leone in Creole is often synonymous to woman. And so I wrote a grant where I called, it was a play on the word Uman Kumbra and Man Kumbra. And
Okay.
so we're having a workshop to bring both men and women to talk about how both people can contribute and participate in the progression of pregnancy and birth preparedness, etc., etc. And so it was something small that was in one or two, it was in 3 communities in Freetown. But that was an example of how, at a small scale, what are the things that you're doing, again, to inspire, to guide, and to enable others to have the right information, to have the right tools to make a change in their own lives. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that's a summary of what I would say. That's what they're looking for. Not leadership that's just a big name, but how does that translate practically and influence those who are around you?
Great, perfect. If you're just tuning in, this program is streaming live on YouTube and Facebook. We'll have a dedicated Q&A session at the end, so please put your questions in the comments as we go. Doctor, you
Yes.
I would say very new, although we've already given birth to others. There are other scholars coming,
Yes.
but you've successfully convinced the selection committee of your leadership potential. How did you
Yes.
approach defining leadership for yourself before you even started writing?
It's good you brought it up. How did you define it? So I might have my definition for leadership. You might have yours, and Chevening might have their definition. Whilst our definitions could be quite common, if there's the first point I'm trying to convey here is you need to understand the Chevening language. Nelson Mandela said, if you speak to somebody in a language they understand, it goes to their head. But if you speak to them in their language, it goes to their heart. You are trying to convince Chevening to invest in you. Go to the website, check for those keywords: leadership, influence, persuade, convince, impact, impact-driven, expertise. Look for those words. These are the words that Chevening understands, and that is your language. So Lydia has said it, when it comes to leadership, it's about asking yourself, what is wrong around my community? What can I do about it? What is going on well in my community? How can I improve it? It's about asking yourself, what do I do well? And how can I do that in a way that it has positive impact on other people? That is my definition for leadership in the most simple way. What is it that you do that other people can benefit from?
Quickly,
Are you in
Lydia.
a hospital?
Sorry, yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Okay. Are you in a hospital and you have a problem with records? And then you ask yourself, okay, I'm somebody who is good with the whole digital stuff. Is this something I can come up with, a database that we can record information of patients? Okay, I'm not good with that, but I'm good with communication. I can meet my boss, have a conversation that we are getting problems with this. And I know somebody who is good at this. Can we bring this person to do this for us? That is leadership. So you've used your ability to communicate well to have a positive impact, not only on the patients that are coming, but on the institution general. That is leadership in my definition.
Perfect. So you mentioned community and impact, and this is very key in my own experience because
Yes.
before I applied, I my application, I made just one attempt. I've heard about people who have made several attempts. But before
Yes.
I applied, I did a lot of research, and
Yes.
I already had a passion. I already had a career desire to be something in the future. But
Okay.
one thing I noticed from my research, or one thing I gathered, was that community and impact is very important for Chevening. I mean,
Yes.
what you will give out there is, I mean, they are looking for someone who can come back home and give something from what they have gathered from their time here in the UK. So
Yes.
this takes me to you again, Lydia. Most of what we've spoken about boils back to what you said in the beginning, which is influence. So how do you demonstrate this influence versus just leadership? Can you give an example on how to show the impact and ripple effect of your actions?
That's a really great point. And I think you kind of slightly already answered that, right? Because the whole point of Chevening is that there's the power of one. You've given this scholarship and this opportunity to one person, but you figured this one person is going to come back home and be a change maker. And the things they've learned, they're going to use to influence several others. So whether they receive the scholarship or not, they are going to be beneficiaries and experience the same knowledge gain, skills, etc. But I also think the thing about influence, I also want to note is that it's also two-way. So there's one way in which we often think as the people who are influencing, especially in leadership, it's only going one way. And we, as the supreme knowledge people and the change makers, we are pointing our fingers at everybody and saying, oh, look at how you're doing all these things wrong. But there's also the part of leadership and influence, which is directed towards yourself, in which being part of a community, having this trust that's been built, having effective communication, doing things in coalition, right? You end up being changed yourself. And that's the part. You also want to be someone who can demonstrate that you are flexible to receiving new knowledge, receiving new skills. And I've read essays before where it's like, I did this, I built this, and the community was so poor, da 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 da. And then I've read ones where they've been successful, where it was, I thought this was the issue, but going in, I realized it was a bigger system, and I became changed, and I learned something, and I was influenced by going into this community and learning from this perspective and connecting with people of that, from diverse walks of life or diverse, perspective that really influence my own self and my own lens. So I think it's good to always look at this leadership and influence as a two-way street, and being able to identify or really draw that out in your essay. Yes, there are things that you've changed, but what are the things that have also changed you? And why this is important, the things that have changed you, is because that introspection, as I would put it, would make you realize the gap you have and why having this scholarship or this opportunity to have this skill and go to the UK is so important, right? So I often say at the end of your essay, yes, you want to show self-awareness of what maybe the challenges and the gaps in the community are, but you also need to be able to highlight what the current skill gaps are that you would be able to fulfill, being flexible to be influenced, to come back, to learn and develop, to come back and integrate into those communities. So I hope that wasn't too long of an answer, but just wanted to, give that that perspective.
That's so perfect. Let's go practical now. Let's take the conversation to structuring the essay itself, and most importantly, choosing examples, which is where so many people go wrong. A great way to structure these essays, from my research, is the STAR method, which is the situation, the task, the action, and result, which you have raised previously. So how did each how did you each use this framework? I'll start with you, Doctor. How did you select your examples? Should applicants focus on one big example or a few smaller ones within the 500 word limit?
All right. I'm a very practical guy. I think I'm a dentist. Like, I see what I do. So, yeah, I like the way the question came. So I want you to look at your essay like a book, like a storybook, a book that somebody will take, read, understand your past, your present, and be so inspired that they are ready to spend £100,000 or more on your education. That story you're writing, it has to be a bestseller. So see your write-up as a story. You know, when you watch a movie, we watch a lot of the series movie, they have a theme. For example, if it's Grey's Anatomy, you know it's a medical movie. If it's Scandal, you know it's something that has to do with crime and everything. Let your story have a theme. I'm a dentist, so my storyline was oral health. You want to be remembered. Last year, they had over 100,000 applications. How are they going to remember you? Just in Sierra Leone, maybe it's over 1,000, and they're only going to take about 6 or 7 people. How do you want to be remembered? It's when you have a story. You have to tell that story in your leadership essay. You have to tell a story, similar story that goes in line with that theme. So the point here is all your examples should not be scattered about. They all should feed to one theme. So when I talk about leadership, I talk about my leadership in oral health. When I talk about networking, I talk about my networking in oral health. When I come to my courses, even though I'm doing something general public health, but I try to explain how does that feed into oral health. When I talk about my career plan, I talk about a career plan 3 years, 5 years, 10 years related to oral health. That shows credibility. So choose a theme. Secondly, if you want to be remembered, you want to tell that story deep. You don't want to tell many stories that people will forget. It could be one powerful story, or it could be two. From my point of view, there are many ways, but my approach was 2 examples. I have 500 words, 250 words for the first example, thereabouts. Sometimes it could be 270 or 230, and 250 for the second example. In that 250, the first 25 words is like a preamble, like to set the stage. I will tell you what I'm going to be talking about. For example, if you ask me about leadership, throughout my personal and professional life, I have, been very passionate about bringing people together. 25 words. And then I spend like 200 words telling you. Of course, you talked about the STAR method.
Yes.
And then I'll spend the remaining 25 to conclude. So first 25 will tell you what I'm going to tell you. 200 words, that's when I will tell you. 25, I tell you what I've told you. And I come to the second example, I do a similar thing. And I will advise when you are approaching the leadership, this was my approach. I gave a leadership example. It could be a previous one, maybe when you were young, maybe when you were in high school, maybe when you were at the university. And the second one could be a recent one, a professional one. So what you are telling them was your leadership journey didn't start today. So I talked about my university when I was president of the Medical Student Association, and I talked about being a senior dental practitioner in Sierra Leone, and I linked them up. So what I was doing in high school, bringing young medical students together, and what I'm doing now, bringing dentists together, you see a theme there. It sticks, it stays in your mind. So this is the approach. And when you are marking, I know 2 hours is not enough really to talk about Chevening. We're just trying to keep it short.
Yeah, I agree.
Whatever you are doing, like Lydia said, and we talked about act local, but have a global view. Your example you are giving could be an individual example, but I want to see how does your family benefit from that example. How does your community benefit? How does Africa? I mean, it could be individual, local, that's at the community level, national, regional, continental, and global. I was going through one of my mentees. She produces honey. I'm like, you can change the world with honey, like just one bottle honey. She was like, how? I'm like, look, you produce one bottle honey for a family. You are raising a healthy family. It goes to 500 bottles. Your community, you are raising a healthy community. And then you start importing it, across West Africa. You are impacting West Africa. It could get to a level where the whole Africa is benefiting, the whole world. So it's something small you are doing at a small scale, but you want to reflect how can the whole world benefit from that. So
Yeah.
this is something I want somebody to have in mind when approaching the Chevening leadership essay. Thank you.
Perfect. To Lydia, you've heard what Doctor have said. How important are these examples, especially the ones that are work related? Can applicants draw from, say, for example, volunteering or community project or even personal life?
Of course. I mean, one of the reasons or one of the attractive things about the profiles of Chevening scholars is that they are holistic, what do you see, individuals, right? It's not only academics, it's about how do you show up with these same characters and these same traits, both in your professional, personal, and in your community, right? So these examples, one thing I would say if we take it practical is, so I took almost a year preparing for the Chevening scholarship. And I knew by my anyway, long story, it was a year in preparation. And essentially, my first draft, the goal was not to get to 500 words immediately. So I had several versions where I just wrote down, and these were all, and the key thing I want to say, they were all honest stories and experiences that I've actually done within my community and within my spaces. And once I did a first, I call it a brain dump. I wrote all the ideas I have, everything, all the things that I think, okay, these are leadership potential, influence, showing. I then wanted to go through, like Doctor had also already mentioned, and get a theme. And my theme, I used the Ubuntu theme, which like, I am because of those who have come before me, and therefore I have a duty for those who come after. And so it ended up being chronological order from 2014 at that time to 2019. And I highlighted how not only did I have key examples of how I had leadership and influence in my community, but I showed a trajectory of growth. When I started with something small, the first example was during the Ebola epidemic, where I partnered with Brussels Airlines to raise funds and gather like clothing, medical things, everything to send home to Sierra Leone, to, participate in the fight against, the epidemic. And then it graduated to this project where I wrote a grant. And then it moved to what I did when I was in university, growing the program and having other Sierra Leoneans come to my same university, engage in the same project. So there was a theme there of looking at there's a responsibility of those who have come before me to continue. There were a lot of people working in this space and talking about examples of not only when you do that project, or that influence or that whatever you did in the community, you dusted your hand and you were like, yeah, this is great. And points for me for doing something. What happened afterwards? The results, right? It's so key because that is the part that is going to differentiate you and show you as a holistic Chevening scholar. So after doing that brain dump of all these ideas, then I did the overview of like, okay, what's going to work thematically? It doesn't have to go chronologically. For me, I wanted to show the theme of just how my leadership has progressed over the years and what that would mean when I get this skill and I get this leadership, what the next phase of my leadership and influence would look like. And for me, it was very intentional. And I mean, even before we joined this call, we were having a conversation about networking and this. It shows you this is the power and the experience of having gained that knowledge and seeing the benefits of it. You pass on that information. And this, for me, I won't lie, is true to the core of who I am. So it comes naturally. So you need to make sure the stories and the depth of what it's what comes naturally to you. Don't try to copy someone else's story of their own leadership and influence, because it will not work for you. You will get to the interview and you will not be able to come alive. I mean, you can see I'm so passionate. The emotion needs to come alive, and it needs to be seen that truly this is who you are. So make sure when you put those stories, you don't embellish it to a point where it's almost untrue, right? You need to make sure that it stays true to who it is. And even at the scale at which it is, once you have the leadership potential, whether it's one person or 5,000 people, it's still there. It doesn't matter. So that's what I would say in terms of just adding on to what Doc had said. Really do that brain dump, reorganize it, make sure you have your theme and stick to what that theme is. I had about 3 stories that I went through, but again, because it was chronological, it showed kind of the progression of how my leadership and influence grew over the, that 5 years period that I was trying to highlight, and making sure I said, this is just the tip, right? The next step is what the opportunity of Chevening, what it's going to do in terms of, breaking the walls of what my leadership and influence would look like, because that's often the part that we miss. And each of these essays at the end, this is what I've done so far. This is the gap. This is what Chevening is going to fill. If you have all the knowledge and there's no need for you to gain any more skill,
Yeah.
then there's no point.
Good.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'll leave it at that.
Perfect. I mean,
Lydia, if I can just, you just said everything. So I just wanted to give Barrister just an example of the STAR approach. Me being a doctor working at a hospital, your example could be something like this. Whilst working at the hospital, we noticed that records of patients were getting lost. That's you providing a context. You didn't just say, okay, I introduced an electronic patient management system. It doesn't make sense. Give a background. That's the situation, a context. So patient files were getting lost, and this was leading to medical errors and patients, getting wrong treatment. You've prepared the situation. What was the task? You needed an electronic management system. From there, what was your action? What did you do? I knew somebody, a classmate from 10 years ago who now works in digital health. So I introduced them to my boss if they can do something for us. And they developed a system. What is the result? We notice now that, instead of taking 30 minutes to look for a patient's record, now we can access the record of patients in 30 seconds and they get their treatment. So imagine if it's an emergency, 4 minutes can be the difference between life and death. So you've shown the situation, the task, the action, and the result. So
perfect.
that is the STAR approach.
I mean,
in an example.
that's a great example. Lydia, let me draw you in again. You mentioned that you took time, like you took almost a year preparing to apply for the scholarship. What was your process? What was this process like? I mean, I can imagine that you have so many times rewriting these essays. And did you ask other people for their views? Did you have someone to review your essay for you? What was the process like?
Sure. So I say it again, not to scare anyone. Everybody has their own process. So for mine, I wanted to make sure that I met every single criteria, right? So grades so I started preparing my last year of my undergraduate degree. And so I knew you needed to have the 2-year work experience, whether it's full-time, it's volunteering, etc. before. And at that time, I applied for a fellowship, and I was like, okay, what are the skills am I going to learn during this fellowship that will set me up? And so I started the plan. I was like, okay, grades. I have, okay, what about the work experience section? I had that covered. I also needed to make sure I had the right people to do my references. So I had several meetings with professors and people I'd worked with in volunteering spaces to say, hey, I'm interested in this scholarship. And I'm thinking about someone who would be a reference, who would be able to write a reference, explaining what the scholarship was about, what are things that they look for. So I'll give them time also to do their research so that they could be best equipped to write a great recommendation for me. And then there was a lot of reflection for me on what universities I wanted to go to and how they would work for me and what all of those things were. So those took a chunk of that 1 year in terms of the planning. And now when it got to the essay, once I had the university, I knew I had interactions with the people who were writing the recommendations for me and all of those. I could feed in what they were going to write in my recommendation, what I was going to study in my university into every part of my essay. So all of it would read as a full story. If you're talking about one thing in your essay and then your references are talking about a whole other person, there's going to be a disconnect. And I think often we miss that aspect, right? Of making sure those things tie together. After I'd done that, every single person who needed to do a reference for me actually read my essays. So they had a full preview to everything I detailed, including, and these are people I knew very personally and they knew me and I knew that they could write, not only talk about what I had written in my essay, but could vouch for my character. And so they knew exactly what I had written in my essay, so they could be able to tailor the references to also complement what I had in my essay. And so in terms of the editing, this was when it got to the final product. For the editing, I actually had a separate group of people who read because I wanted fresh perspective and I didn't want it to be redundant, right? I didn't want it to seem like, oh, the reference is also talking about the same thing, but these were also individuals who knew me. Often people, ask me to review essays, and I'm sure all of you have gotten that. But especially when there are people who you don't know, you read the essay and you're like, I have no idea who you are. There's no depth, right? And it's good to have people, yes, it's good to have people who don't know you to read your essays, but it's also good to have people who know you very well so they can be like, you're missing this aspect. You need to tie this part a bit deeper because I was there. I had friends and relatives who were there when I did the work with Ebola, and they were like, you forgot to write about the partnerships, things like that. So it's a mix of having people who could give a fresh perspective, maybe who have no idea who you are, and they can be able to read it and gain. And I asked them, when you've read the essay, what can you tell me about what I'm trying to say? And it was very important to have those conversations because it's humans that are going to read this essay. They're going to be 100,000. What is the most memorable thing about this essay when you read it? And if they can't think of something, there's an issue. You know what I mean? You're not standing out. It's not impactful. So I had several iterations of that, and it was really helpful. And once I finished with one person, and then, so I had about like a 4-person reading committee to help me with the essay. But all in all, it was really great because all these different perspectives, when it comes together, it makes for a great piece of 500 words, So, yeah.
Perfect. I think it's high time now we take a break. We've been talking a lot. Just grab a water or perhaps go somewhere else. Let's go for a break. Doc is already drinking. Doc is already drinking. Let's take a break and then we'll come. We have so many questions from Facebook and YouTube, and take some of these questions and then try to wrap up. See you soon, guys. Welcome back to Wivo Legal Tech for Africa. Today we started the Chevening Guide to Applying series, and we are looking at crafting a well-good leadership essay. With me, I have Lydia Barnard-Jones, who is a Chevening Scholar of 2021 and an alumni of Oxford University. and then Dr. Ahmed A. Sharif, who is currently studying at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, and in collaboration with the London School of Economics as well. He's a dentist, and all of us are from the beautiful diamond of Africa, Sierra Leone. Welcome once more, guys. So before I go back to you guys, let's look at some of the questions that have come in from our different platforms. Let me start with YouTube. Fatmata Toure is asking, so if your career path is different from what you have been doing for your community service, how can you connect that? Lydia, I'll ask you to take this one. Do you want me to go over it? If if your career path is different from what you have been doing for your community service, how can you connect that?
All right, that's a great question. I think it depends on what essay, and if it's specifically in the leadership and influence essay, it's being able to demonstrate your leadership skills and potential within that space. And then how do you pivot? I mean, I'm looking at this question blind because I don't know how varied this volunteer space versus where you want to go, but find a way to connect the two, right? What are the skills you've learned in one that have made you realize that maybe there's a bigger issue in the other space that you want to work in? So say, for example, I don't know, you were volunteering in a sports arena, and that's what you do, or you take photos, or you're a photographer in a sports place, and blah blah blah. And there are things you witnessed whilst you were there that really emphasize the need for sports, for like more legal or stronger like legal frameworks around access to spaces or something like that. I don't know. It's really hard to do it blind, but I think that even if it's different, being able to demonstrate one, your leadership and your influence within that space, and then how does that connect in terms of skills and gaps and knowledge for you to be able to know the things that you know that you need in terms of what you want to study.
All right.
I don't know if that answers that question. Yeah.
Lydia, a follow-up question for you. The same person is saying,
Yes.
For preparation, you took a year. What can you say to us that have just started preparing now to apply this year?
Take it up a notch. Just crunch the 1 year. I mean, it was 1 year, but I wasn't doing it every day. Okay. So I didn't want to stress. That's why it was a long period for me. So what I would say now is take a time, brainstorm, set a calendar in which you have on 2 or 3 days a week where you're dedicating 1 or 2 hours in really focusing on the things you need to achieve. So if it's the first week, you're looking at, okay, week 1, I want to assess whether I have the volunteering hours or the work experience hours. I make sure I've spoken to other people I want to think about for my references, make sure I have my transcripts and my grades. You can do that in a week, right? Because those are 3 different things that they can happen concurrently, right? So you can do that. And then week 2, you're like, okay, I want to look at now what is going to be my essay for leadership. You brainstorm everything, you leave it. The week 3, you go to another essay. Week 4, you go to another essay, because you have up till November, I believe, is the closing date,
First
right?
week November.
Yes. So you have every week where you look at it and you have milestones. After you finish your first draft of each of all 4 essays, you take a break, then you restart it. So that gives you 2 months if you do 1 essay a week to still be able to make up for not having to do it in a year. Okay. So that's what I would advise. Set a time, be very, very protective of that time. If you say you're going to do 2 hours, stick to that 2 hours. Do not let the TikTok, the WhatsApp, and all of that distract you. Focus. When you tell people, I'm sending you my essay on Friday to review, stick to the date on Friday. Make sure you send it. And then you are very practical. Hey, I would like to get feedback in 2 to 3 days, and you follow up. The moment you start missing your own deadlines, people then don't take you seriously. So that's what I would suggest.
Perfect. Just by way of clarification, the scholarship this year closes at on the 7th of October, 2025. Instead of November.
Okay.
Yeah, it closes on the 7th of October this year. And
Okay.
another clarification about because somebody is asking on Facebook if it's possible to download an offline version of your application and then you review it before you finally submit it. I don't know about. I think the system has now changed as against ours that we used, so we would have to check that again.
If I can say something to that,
Yes.
Do they mean after you've inserted your answers into the after you've typed your answers?
Precious
Because
Ebudul, I mean, Doc is trying to clarify. If you can clarify to us if it's after you've typed your answer. But the question is it possible to download an offline version of the application you can work on before you finalize and submit? I think we had a thing like that. We used to download it, look at it, then go back and make changes.
And I think it should be there. But even if it's not there, what you can do is you can have like a Word document. You will copy each question and transfer it, and then you type your answers on the Word document. And when you're done, you are happy with them, you've checked the number of words, and then you can upload them. So basically, when I was applying, I just transferred everything from my Word document,
So like copy and paste. You just copy from the Word and
so you can do everything on the Word document, and later you just transfer it.
That's smart. I didn't think about that. All right, that's perfect. I was just going there and write, save, come back, write, save. Anyways.
Okay.
Yeah, and let's go to the next question on Facebook. Is the same person is saying, I read an application few years back that required you to list networks you are part of. What can you do if you are not part of any network? Like, say, for example, let's say club, etc. Are they still asking? Well, I don't know if any one of you can answer that. Are they still asking what can you do to leverage? Are they asking you for affiliation?
No, I don't think it's a must that you have to be affiliated to a professional body or not. It's about your networks. Like, how do you network with people? You could be part of a social club and actually write a very strong example from that. Okay, say you have a social club, you know somebody there. Let's say you're a lawyer, and by a social gathering, you met somebody who, let's say, is a senior lawyer, and through that engagement, you are able to get him to mentor you, to share ideas with you, to work on a project together. So it's a social space, but you've used it for networking.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Lydia, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I don't think there's no criteria in terms of having particular networks that are recognized to strengthen your SAA. I can tell you for a fact I had none. So, and I still got the scholarship. So I don't think that's a criteria. Now, I don't know if that was ever an option on the application to input it, but generally I'll just be wary because certain associations, maybe on the digital or on their Facebook or social media pages, might have very left or whatever politics that might influence your acceptance. So I would be very cautious with disclosing those things, especially if you do not know how that sits in terms of its alignment with the Chevening brand.
Perfect.
Yeah. I think the question on affiliations, I think is with the Mandela Washington Fellowship. There is a part where they ask you if you are affiliated to any professional body.
Okay, that's good. I mean, that's why it's great to have a lot of experience. Doc is also a Mandela Washington Fellow. All right, so now let's take the conversation further. Let me start with you, Lydia. Let's talk about common pitfalls and pro tips. What are the most common mistakes you've seen people make in writing their leadership essay? For example, using we instead of I, or being too generic.
Lack of preparation. A lot of people underestimate how hard it is to write 500 words with enough depth. And often people start writing it too late. And then you realize after a few reviews, the deadline is coming up. And it's like, there's nothing much we can do. So for me, the biggest one is time. There's no harm in finishing your application a month plus before even the application period, right? Like the closing date. You can leave it, let it simmer. As I say, let the essay simmer. And then you come back, you read it, and you're like, is this really what I want to say? So that's a big number one pitfall, lack of preparation, and two, underestimating really how difficult it is to condense, especially if, like me, your first versions are, my first versions of some of my essays were almost 1,000 words. So having to condense that to 500 is not an easy task. And making sure there's enough depth, but not too much that you're like adding too many filler words, right? The other thing I think the third thing I'll talk about is lack of conciseness in writing. And this essay is going to teach you that. We think because, of course, the way we've written essays when we're going to school is you fill it out with a lot of words because you're trying to hit a word count. Now the goal is to tell a lot with very few words.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't realize how hard that process of itself is. So give yourself practice. How do you say something? So I arrived at the hospital. I was working in the hospital and there were so many records and the rooms were always filled with so many records and patients were impatient and things were getting lost. And all of that is great, but we just want one sentence to just talk about the issue, the situation. Yeah. I worked in HR and, it was always so many issues. We had so many people applying for work and it often took so much time to review all of these applications. And then responding back to, there was an issue with efficient turnaround with hiring processes. That covers a whole lot of details, right? Yeah. So even getting to that conciseness is a very common pitfall, right? And then the stories, making sure you're not just putting stories because you need to put a story. Yeah. Making sure that there's a next step, right? Yes. So even added to the STAR, right? I often talk about what I call the START method. So you have the situation, the task, the action, the result. What is the takeaway? Is a very important one that I would add. The takeaway is you need to make sure, and what I often talk about, it's like as an add-on onto the result, your own reflection. What did you learn? And it could be one sentence. It's great to do that reflection and highlight that. And that is going to be hard to do. And I'm not going to, obviously, I don't want to say that it's impossible. Obviously, it's not because others have done it, but it takes time to refine your essays to get to that sweet spot of that paragraph of 4 to 5 lines that really is succinct enough but has enough depth. So those would be a few things I would cover for now. I don't know if Doc has anything else he wants to add.
Yeah, before you come in, Doc, I want to ask you a specific question, Doc. What was the hardest part about writing this particular essay, this leadership essay, and what's your number one tip to overcome that challenge?
Number one, I was working. I work with the government up to evening hours, and I was just starting my business at the time. So I'll come and I'm at the site up till around 8 p.m. So when will I do this? So that was one challenge. The second challenge was just like Lydia is saying, you have so many things in your head, so many things you've done. But the brevity is one of the qualities of a leader, like going straight to the point. So that was difficult. And also in choosing the examples. So when it came to those 2 hours where I walk, like she said, that was my approach, 1 question per week. So Monday, I start fresh, first thing in the morning. You know, they call it like, is it the Einstein hour? That's the hour wherein you are at your top productivity. For some people, it's early in the morning. For others, it's in the afternoon. Try to find that time. Most of the time,
Mine
it's
is
in the
late at
morning.
night.
Late at night,
yeah,
okay.
2 a.m., 3 a.m.
Okay. So find that 1-2 hour where you are at your sharpest. Dedicate it. So mine was very early. So I'll wake up early, fresh, and I just write. So 500 words, I'll write 1,000 words because I didn't want to limit. That's brainstorming, session. And I'll have a small corner by the end of the page where I'll just write random things as they come. And then later on, try to see how I bring them in. So Monday, Tuesday was fresh writing. And then I'll leave it, Wednesday, Thursday, I'll come have a look again. Okay, I wanted this. Sometimes you are walking on the streets and an idea will come, especially when you are focused that this week is leadership week, ideas will start coming. Ideas will start coming. By the time you are Friday, you've written something. You can spend the weekend to revise it. Of course, weekend, you are not working, you're at home, you can go through it. So that helped in managing my time. When it came to the examples, it comes to this point again. You might have very good examples. The examples should be relevant. They should be impactful. You have some examples that are relevant, but not quite impactful. And you have other examples that are very impactful, but irrelevant. So look for that sweet spot. It could be an example. It could be an example which is relevant, even though it's not the biggest project you've done, but it meets the relevance and impact. Choose that example. An example that feeds to your story. That's the one you want to have. And of course, when it came to the final part, which was the words, I'm like, okay, no problem. I'll write 1,000 words. But back to the technique which I gave, you don't have to follow this, but it could be useful. I'm like, it's a star approach, 25 words for the opening, and I have like 50 words to set the pace, like to build the context, another 50 words talk about the task, another 50 words to talk about the action, and 50 more to talk about the results. It could differ. It could be 30 words for the start. It could be 70 words for the action. But that was something like a skeleton, which I used. And if you could approach it that way, it would be very nice. And what Lydia said about start approach, I didn't exactly have a name for it, but that's something very effective. Just, the way you end it, like you give an opening and then you talk, and then you give this. So that's like it's like you are teaching the person who is reading your essay. It could be something they already know, but you are like actually putting it in their face that I know this. You've talked about your leadership. You've talked about your approach. Like the example I gave, I learned that after you've talked about how you came with the medical records and the patient became better, you can say, I learned that sometimes the smallest actions have the greatest impact. You know how somebody will feel when they read that, when they are reading your essay? So that's something you want to include in your essays.
That's the dentist you love to meet, Dr. Ahmed El Sheikh.
Thank you.
Guys, we are running out of time. Time is not our friend. So, but before we close the curtains for today,
Yes.
I'll put in this question to the both of you. Any final pro tips on making your essay stand out in front of the plethora, the thousands of other applications? Let me start with you, Lydia.
So I feel like this would be a reoccurring theme for me. Spend time, prepare, really sit and reflect on what exactly is the story you want to tell. It's very, very important because it is going to be, this is the first, what is I going to say? The first interaction of who you are before you even get to interview phase where you get to maybe come alive and maybe work the room and win extra points, right? So for me, authenticity is very, very important, right? Who you are and what you've learned, your takeaway, your values, your experiences. Do not underestimate the power that those things have. Yes, you might need help in refining it to tell a story that works, that will align and maybe be structured enough to get to work with the Chevening brand, but don't lose your authenticity. This is very, very important because you read essays, and I've also been in the interview panel before in certain stages when scholars get to the interview round, and you read the essay, and the person is sitting in front of you, and you're just like, "Are you sure you wrote this?" Right? And we forget that there's that second aspect, and that's why it's a combination. Because who you write, you have to present that person. And if you're not the same person, you're going to have issues, right? So that's why you need to be your authentic self and know that whatever your experiences are and what your story is, and however important that thing is within the space and the sector in Sierra Leone, it has value. We've had Chevening scholars who've gone and are studying, they have masters, not the typical medicine, health, health, law, and all of that. We've had really interesting scholars who've come, someone who's in the HR space. And you read, but it's something that's authentic to who they are, and there's a need for it. And they presented that story in a way that I was like, yes, we have a crisis in our country in human resources, which is true, right? Everybody has wahala with finding a plumber, something, and all the way to good teachers and everything, right? Across all sectors. And so being able to package that in a way that shows that what I'm going to study is cross-cutting. And it was so powerful. Same thing with media and all of these things, journalism. So don't think there's a particular brand or particular degree that's needed. It's making sure that you authentically show that within my space, I've spent enough time, I have enough knowledge to see and hands-on experience to see that there are gaps that I am willing to be able to fill. And I want to be giving that experience because I'm not going to use that information or this experience selfishly, but it's in order to make a difference in Sierra Leone and globally. So I think that it's really important to maintain, if I would say authenticity is number one, you need to make sure that you're true to who you are and what you need to go and study and learn, and not because you think this is the thing that Chevening wants people to apply for this year. You know what I mean? So like how AI is the thing now, everyone wants to go and study something in tech. You can also you can do that, it's great, but you can also do things in areas that are important to you.
Perfect.
So that's, yeah.
Doc, yes, any final pro tip? Of course, talking about AI, Doc. What's the implication of writing your essays with ChatGPT?
I will advise, before you start your application, close your eyes. Just close your eyes and imagine who you would become after Chevening. What Chevening means to you. Just take that moment. Reflect how far you've come. Maybe you are somebody who started in a very small school. Maybe you had trouble getting your fees to even go to the university. You've come that far, and now you are here. You want to take the next level. Relax. Be authentic, like Lydia said. Your story is what makes you stand out. There is nobody in this world with your story. You might not be the most impactful person. You might not have touched 500 lives. Maybe you touched one life. You had a brother or you had a sister, who wanted, maybe you helped her get an education. And now let's say you are somebody working in gender, the need for women to be educated. And you reflect on how you saw your mother hardworking, dedicated, and imagine what your mom could do without an education. And then you're like, imagine what she could do with an education. That's where I became passionate about this. So you have to tell Chevening, what is your project? What are you going to do when you come back? What are you doing about it now? Don't tell me you are coming to change Sierra Leone healthcare if you are not doing something about it now. It could be as small as talking to your family about mpox, which means if you have the chance, you could eradicate mpox in Sierra Leone. So you want to do something big, tell us that small thing you are doing and how Chevening can help you achieve that big thing. On the AI, number one, when you write with AI, these guys have AI detectors. They are going to know that you use AI to write. That's number one. Number two, the authenticity is sucked out. AI just write generally. That story, that personal touch, which we humans feel, will not be in your essays. When you write a deep, authentic story, somebody takes your paper, reads it, they connect with it. When I talked about a boy who passed away because they removed their own teeth and they bled to death, that's a story. I mean, it could be there, but not this year. Somebody applying for a Chevening. And what I'm trying to do to reduce those numbers. What is your own story? Something small. Tell us that story. And if you use AI, it doesn't help. I'm not saying not to use AI 100%, but give it your personal touch. And then AI can help maybe summarize, but then you have to connect with it. Okay, after the summary, does it still feel, does it still have my touch? Maybe you have problem with grammar, you have problem with English. AI can help in that, but make sure you have the final read of it. And let's see your passion in it. Let's see the passion, in your write-up. I think those are the, three tips I'll give.
Perfect, Doc. Perfect. Lydia, thank you so much to you, and thank you so much to you, Dr. Sharif, for coming to the program and helping us with this wonderful guide. And this incredible insight. And a huge thanks to our audience for joining us. And be sure to follow Legal Tech on all our social media platforms to get the update on episode 2 of our series, which will be next week. And we'll be focusing on the networking essay.
Networking.
So good luck with your application, guys. Just look at the screen, you see where to follow social media platforms. Once again, from Nairobi, thank you so much, Lydia, and from London, thank you so much. I have to say thanks in Swahili. I have to say thanks in Swahili.
Asante.
Asante sana.
Asante sana.
Thank you very much.
Asante sana.
Yes.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Thank you, Una, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
All right, until we meet next week.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Until we meet next week, I have been your humble host, Mohamed Wuriba, signing out. Bye-bye. Tata.
Wivo Legal Tech.